Will Micah Parsons have more than 12 and a half sacks this season? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your
Locked
daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked on Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. This episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL or enter promo code LockedOnNFL for a free water bottle with any order. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. I am your host, Marcus Mosier. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosier. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Today, we are making some predictions for the Dallas Cowboys heading into the 2023 NFL season. All the lines brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Landon, let's run through as many of these kind of season-long props and player props as we can get through. The first one on DraftKings, Micah Parsons, over under 12 and a half sacks.
Yeah, I'm taking the over on this. I mean, I just feel like, we talked about all off season how it feels like Micah has taken his game to another level. We've seen it in training camp. I think it's tough because we haven't really seen him unleashed in a preseason situation. Obviously, haven't seen him unleashed against another team. But I have every reason to believe that he's going to hit that number and go beyond that. Even with all the extra attention, I think that it's going to be tough to kind of spend a bunch of resources trying to block him up when there's other folks on this defense that can get after the quarterback as well. So I think he's going to hit that 12 number and then get well past it, if I'm going to be honest.
Some of this is just a health bet, right? Because if Micah Parsons plays 16 or 17 games, like he's getting more than 12 and a half sacks. But if he happens to miss 4 games with a sprained ankle or whatever, it's going to be really hard to get over that total. So you are betting on the health, but at the same time, there's just going to be like 4 games this year where he has 2 or 2.5 sacks, and those games alone are going to help you get to that total. So I'm inclined to bet the over here as well.
Yeah, it's not like we haven't seen him get 3 sacks in a game before. That's not frankly uncommon. So I think he could clear this bar even with missing some games if unfortunately, hopefully that doesn't happen. But if it were to happen.
All right, here's one I actually like even better than that. Staying on the defensive side of the ball, Trayvon Diggs, over under 3.5 interceptions. If you bet the over, you actually get some really good odds here, plus 122.
I kind of would bet the over with those odds.
Yeah, so would I.
I think Trayvon is going to have a high number of pass deflections. I think going in year in year out, he just has really good ball skills. He tracks the ball very well. It's his game is baiting quarterbacks to throwing the ball and getting his hands on the football. So catching 4 interceptions. If given the opportunity, I have no doubt that Trayvon Diggs would go there. But of course, everything else that we just mentioned factors in injury, health, and opportunity and that sort of thing. But I'm going to say that with Stephon Gilmore on the opposite side, Diggs may actually get more opportunities to see more footballs thrown his way. Yep. I think I'll take the over on this one, to be honest, because I think he's just going to have a lot more opportunity.
I would agree. We're not going to pick overs for every single one of these, but that is one like I get. They're going to be playing in more shootout games this year than I think they were last year. They're just playing better quarterbacks, which you would think better quarterbacks would lead to fewer interception opportunities. But to me, it's actually the opposite, right? If you're going to be going against more quarterbacks that are just going to be throwing the ball more often, you're going to have more opportunities. So I like the over there as well. I got another one for you that I really like. Frankly, I'm kind of shocked by this line on FanDuel right now. They're just giving you away free money. Brandin Cooks, over under 725 receiving yards.
Ooh, that seems really low.
Doesn't it? That's 42 and a half yards a game if he stays healthy for all 17 games. Even say he misses like 3 games and he plays 14 games this year, he would need to average 51 and a half yards to go over the total.
Okay, I know we said that we weren't going to take the over on all of these, but come on, man. Like this is a guy that has, consistently gotten 1,000 yards receiving in his sleep, no matter what the team, no matter what the situation. So I take the over on that, I think. Look, even with all the extra targets that are going to go CeeDee's way. He's, Cooks is not the focus of the offense anymore the way he has been previously. I still have a hard time believing that he won't be able to eclipse that 1,000-yard receiving catching situation, because it's just there's going to be targets to go around. He is going to get a healthy dose of targeting. It's not like he's chopped liver. And I think the yards per catch specifically may be as high as it will have been, in previous spots in his career. So I tend to think that he'll get. I'm taking the over on this one as well, I have to say.
Again, 51 yards a game, assuming he misses 3 games for whatever reason. I think he's going to average like 13 yards a catch. So, I mean, can you get to 5 catches, 4 catches a game? I
would think so, right? Yeah.
Well, and spoiler alert, I recorded with Patricia Traina today for Crossover Thursday, which will be out obviously on Thursday. And like we were talking about some of the matchups, and CeeDee Lamb is going to be going up against Adoree Jackson in week 1.
Yeah.
Deonte Banks, the rookie corner, has really been playing as the X. They've got a 6th-round rookie corner that's going to be likely guarding Brandin Cooks one-on-one without much safety help, especially with Wink Martindale blitzing a lot. Like, how does Brandin Cooks not win those type of matchups just all year long?
Yeah, I mean, that's the real thing. It's we talked about the fact that he's not getting the number 1 overall targets, but at the same time, he's not seeing number 1 overall coverage either. He's feasting against lesser than corners. So, I tend to think that kind of overbalances the lack of targeting that he got compared to the previous years. I mean, again, I don't want to take the over on all of these, but they're making me want to bet these. They're making me want to put some money down here.
We got another one. Again, this is courtesy of FanDuel. CeeDee Lamb, over 1,100 receiving yards. Again, if he plays all 17 games, that's about 64 receiving yards per game. This one is, to me, just more of a health bet than anything.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I just have a hard time believing he'd get under 1,100 yards unless there was a health situation. So I agree. I mean, we got to find one that we're going to pick the under on here. So one of these points, but I think they are kind of, hedging their bets here a lot on health.
And that's what it is, right? Like FanDuel obviously knows that not every player is going to play 17 games. So they're trying to find a number that makes sense, if assuming a player is going to miss a game, 2, 3 games. Even if CeeDee Lamb were to miss 4 games, let's say he goes on the short-term IR for anything, you're still looking at him needing to average like 75 receiving yards a game. And I just think, frankly, he will, unless he gets hurt and Dak Prescott's hurt. And even then we saw him be pretty productive with Cooper Rush, but I have a hard time believing outside of a major injury that costs him like 30, 40, 50% of the year that he's not going to go over that total.
Yeah. And I mean, on top of that too, it's like, if CeeDee Lamb isn't averaging 75 yards a game, then the Cowboys have got bigger problems at that point, right? Like,
yes,
they need CeeDee Lamb to be producing at that level in order for season team goals to kind of be met, I would assume.
All right, last one here that I want to mention to you. Dak Prescott, over under passing touchdowns this year, 26.5.
It's a good number, I think, though.
Yeah, because I think they're going to run the ball a lot when they get to the
at least score a lot of touchdowns on the ground, I think, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think I would probably take a push there. I mean, 26 sounds right about right,
I probably just wouldn't bet on that one, right? Because I think if he stays relatively healthy, I think he's going to go over that. But I could also just see this being one of those weird years where they get a lot of like goal line looks, and they just happen to run a lot, or they use Dak's legs, and Dak has 7 rushing touchdowns this year, rather than 2. So I don't know. It's a good line.
Yeah, because I mean, again, like the Cowboys were one of the most efficient red zone offenses in football last year. So I do think that punching the ball in is not going to be a problem. The issue is it going to be through the air, right? Like, or how many of these times are they going to throw a pass to CeeDee Lamb down to the 6-yard line and then punch it in with his own read, or whatever, hand up to Tony. So I think 26 is a good number, and probably enough that I would probably avoid betting for fear of losing my money.
Let's talk about some more things that we expect to happen this year for the Cowboys, and where we think they'll be a little bit different, maybe on offense in 2023. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs make you look so good. Bird Dogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg. giving you a truly sculpted look. Bird dogs do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but they just fit way better. They fit better than regular shorts that are made of that stiff, restricting cotton. Bird dogs have fixed this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that makes it look just like a khaki, but stretches so it gives you a slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Bird Dog uses anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. Bird dogs are functional for any occasion. I love wearing them to the golf course. I also like wearing them when I'm just walking around the house and lounging, doing podcasts and stuff. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL or enter promo code LockedOnNFL at checkout for a free Bird Dogs water bottle with your order. That is birddogs.com/LockedOnNFL for a free water bottle at checkout. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. I want to thank you for making us your first listen every day. We want to let you guys know about the Locked On Ultimate NFL season preview. It's here. The 7-episode extravaganza brings opinions, analysis, and plenty of debate from all 32 of our Locked On NFL hosts. Landon was on that series. Absolutely fantastic, especially if you're an NFC East fan who happens to root for the Cowboys. Plus, we have some added insights for our national experts. It's a can't-miss series before the season kicks off. Catch every episode on Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Landon, let's talk about some aspects of this team that we expect to be a little bit different than what we've seen before. Let's do one positive, one negative. What you got?
So I think for the positive thing, I think we need to discuss that's noticeably different is just overall offensive speed. We talked, obviously we have gone through a lot about Brandin Cooks and about his addition and what it does to the team. But I think it's not just the addition of Cooks, it's the combination of like a couple of other different realms that have all kind of come together all at once, right? It's Cooks, obviously, but it's also, as Zeke left, the rise of Tony Pollard, there's obviously more speed there. I think Zeke's carries are likely going to be split up between the other backup running backs. So we talk about Deuce Vaughn, who has a lot more juice. And then you talk about Dowdle, who you feel like even as a bigger back has got some burst that has a little bit more speed than what we've seen in the running back position previously. And then you throw in the fact that you've got guys like Turpin, who is going to have more of an offensive role than he had previously, and definitely has a lot of juice, a lot of speed there. And then a healthy Gallup, who isn't necessarily a speed demon, but has that kind of deep route
vertical
ability.
element.
The vertical element to his game. So I just think that, when you look at, and then on top of that, the tight end situation, right? You Dalton Schultz wasn't slow, but I think you sub in Schoonamaker, who is got a little bit more speed, Ferguson, who's going to get those looks, who's a little bit more athletic. And I think that overall, suddenly you take a step back and you see that this team is markedly faster than it was top to bottom last season. And I think that that's going to make a huge difference in their ability to, create open space underneath, to create larger windows for Dak to throw into. And it's also going to make the team more dangerous with the football in their hands. When we've seen the element in training camp, but we haven't seen it unleashed in the games yet, where Cooks is dangerous with the ball in his hands, not even just going deep and catching it. Like if you can get a short pass out to Cooks, he can make a move and he can go. And I think the same thing obviously applies to Turpin and some of these other guys that the Cowboys have. So I just think that the change that I've noticed is just overall offensive team speed. And I think it was worth noting before we go into this game.
There's no question they're faster than they were last year. And I think you even mentioned somebody like Turpin, Turpin only played a handful of snaps each game last year. I just expect his role to be bigger. And now that you're taking, who was the number 3 receiver for most of the year last year? Like Noah Brown, probably, right?
Yeah.
You're replacing basically Noah Brown with Brandin Cooks. That change alone is going to make this offense just feel so much more dynamic and so much more faster. I think CeeDee Lamb, while he's not faster, I think he's going to play a little bit faster now that this is his 4th year in the NFL. It's his 4th year, I don't want to say in the system, but he's had the same offensive coach and the same quarterback for the last 4 years. I just think he's going to play so much more without having to think, right? He's not going to have to know, like, hey, this is where I need to run this route. He can just go out there and play. I will be shocked that this offense doesn't feel significantly faster right out of the gate.
Yeah, I mean, because again, it's not just one player; it's like incremental changes and improvements in speed in a variety of different spots, all happening at once, and I think it's gonna be noticeable.
And don't forget about somebody like Jalen Tolbert, who doesn't have a lot of speed, but when you compare that to like a Dennis Houston, who was playing
Yeah,
some early season snaps last year, or a Michael Gallup, who was coming back from a big, ACL injury, even having somebody like Tolbert who has 4.50 speed, I think that's going to just be a little, maybe 1%, a little bit more faster on offense, which that could be the difference in a
yeah,
big play or not.
absolutely. It's incremental changes that honestly I think we're gonna notice the most.
All right, where's a negative that you could see that could be different with this team this year?
Well, it's certainly just going to be different, and we kind of associate this with negative. But I think kind of sticking with the offense a little bit. I think that the play calling is going to be less expansive. I just think that part of what the McCarthy wanted to do by taking back play calling duties was, not to limit the playbook, but maybe limit your selection from the playbook, not feel like you have to hit every corner of the playbook, right? And I think, there's some benefits there. I think there was times last year when we felt like, or at least I felt like that the offense didn't really have, those kind of 2 or 3 plays to hang their hat on, that when they needed yards, they could get. I feel like at times duo behind Terrence and Zach was that play, but then Terrence Steele got hurt and they couldn't necessarily rely on that. I think one thing that we're going to start seeing more of is trying to find plays that the Cowboys can kind of hang their hats on, that they can rely on, that they know they can get positive yardage from, and allowing that to kind of be a crutch at times when the offense feels disjointed. Because I think that's as good as this offense was. When it could turn it on, it was incredible. But it would take a while for this offense to kind of get synced up in games. And I feel like part of that is that when things don't feel right, they didn't have a set of plays that they knew they could turn to, that they could get positive results from. And I think that that's something that kind of not necessarily limiting the playbook, but kind of just not opening up the entire playbook every single game may help, kind of fix. It helps kind of focus the preparation and get the team ready. But to the detriment of the idea that, look, the truth of the matter is we have Mike McCarthy calling the playbook. So we're going to see a lot of dragging. We're going to see, the slant flat. We're going to see a lot of mesh. We're going to see a lot of these kind of West Coast offenses start to leak their way into the playbook and start kind of being used regularly as they get a kind of feel and a positive sort of repetition of this sort of play that they can kind of hang their hat on. If things go wrong and they need to kind of straighten the ship a little bit, they need to have plays that they can go to and feel comfortable running.
I've got mixed feelings on this one because if you go back and watch like the last 2 years of Kellen Moore, there were some really cool play calls in there that I think people forgot about. Like, I'll give you an example. I was watching a game yesterday and I can't remember who the opponent was, but they ran basically a hook and ladder at the end of a game to try to set up a field goal opportunity. Yep. They threw the ball to, I think it's
Cedric Wilson.
I think it was Cedric Wilson in 2021. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Wilson caught like a dig route and then flipped it to CeeDee Lamb and it ended up gaining like 30 yards and CeeDee was able to get out of bounds. Or you go to the 2021 game against the Vikings where they set up a double pass that had Cedric Wilson wide open down the middle of the field to give you a 75-yard touchdown. Like, those kind of plays are really cool and they can spark your offense and get things rolling. And I think we're going to miss that a little bit going from Kellen Moore to Mike McCarthy. At the same time, I do think you're right in the sense that it felt like there was just this collection of plays that Kellen Moore had, and he would pick and choose which ones he would use. And there was nothing sometimes he wouldn't run a play in the first quarter specifically to try to get something set up for the fourth quarter when they would have the same exact look, but there would be a counter off of it. Like, I think that's where Kellen Moore is still working as a play caller and as an offensive mind. And sometimes you need to run stuff early in the game against certain looks. So, later in a game, okay, this is how we're going to execute, the cutthroat player, the kill shot at the end of the game, for the lack of a better word. I think McCarthy might just have a better feel for that than what Kellen Moore does.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I think that the last play of the Kellen Moore era kind of is indicative of what can happen if you go to that well too much, right? You try to be too tricky, and suddenly you've got Zeke snapping the ball at center,
Which
and
I get. I mean, you're just trying to figure
yeah,
out weird
but
ways.
I mean, I think I totally don't. I'm not upset with him about the play call, but I think it is indicative of what we're talking about, right? Like sometimes the trick plays are great, and sometimes you lose 30 yards on a play, or like. So I think that it's not that one is necessarily better than the other, and I think that it's both have their upsides and downsides as far as kind of play calling mentality philosophy. But I think it is going to be different. I think it is going to be more about focusing on the proper execution of these handful of plays as opposed to, hey, we've got this enormous playbook. We could call any one of these plays at any time. Yeah, we may have only practiced this one play twice in practice, and we may not have the details down all the way, but it's definitely going to surprise the defense. I think they're trading that for a little bit better refinement on a smaller group of plays.
All right, Landon, let's make some season-long predictions for the Cowboys, including what we believe their win total will be this year. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is so easy to use, and you can bet on everything from spreads to player props. Some of the stuff that we're mentioning on the podcast. Go bet on FanDuel right now. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. All right, Landon, finishing up here. We haven't done this all year. We're going to make our predictions for the Cowboys for the 2023-2024 season. What is your regular season record prediction for this team?
I think I'm going to go with 11-6. Is it? Yeah, I'm giving the numbers right. 17. I think if I'm not mistaken, FanDuel or the
they've got them at 9.5 right now.
9.5. Yeah. So I feel confident kind of taking the over just a little bit there. I mean, I think it is a very tough schedule the Cowboys are going to face. There's no doubts about that. But I also think that this is a team that is quietly confident and quietly better than they were last year. I also think that it really does seem like the Cowboys are somehow playing the role of the underdog so far.
Well, I just saw Peter Schrager from NFL.com. He did his top 7 NFC playoff teams this year. The Cowboys weren't on it.
Look, and I guess I've always said that I'd prefer that to be the kind of approach, right? That the Cowboys would be the kind of forgotten team in the group that surprised the world. It's shocking that a 12-win team the last 2 seasons would be kind of the underdog and not considered to be the top 7 teams in the NFC. But I mean, I guess so. I tend to think that they are going to be a better team than a lot of folks are expecting. I think with a little bit of injury luck, they could have maybe the best roster in the NFC and maybe the best roster in the NFL. I think they're in the conversation for that. So, we talk about it all the time. These seasons are rolls of the dice, right? Yeah. I think the Cowboys are certainly in that striking distance area of being good enough to make a serious roll into the playoffs. So, I expect a year's worth of improvement here. So I'm going to predict maybe a step back in win-loss record, like 11 wins, but a step forward in playoff production. I see them taking their next step into the NFC Championship game, and then we'll see how it goes from there.
Assuming, again, we have to assume there's no massive injuries. Like you have Micah Parsons for the majority of the year, CeeDee Lamb, all that kind of stuff. I just don't see how this team is worse than they were a year ago. Because remember, like they lost Dak Prescott for the first 5 games. I guess 5 of the first 6 games of the year. They lost Michael Gallup. They didn't have him for the first month of the year.
They
had injuries
never
all
had
over the
their
place.
starting offensive line. I mean, again, I don't know how many times we can say this. They never had their starting offensive line
Never,
last season.
not once. And maybe they won't again. Well, hopefully crossing our
We'll
fingers
see.
in Tyler Smith, right?
Yeah.
But the schedule's harder. Like there's no doubt about it. Like playing the AFC East and playing the NFC West is going to be a challenge. But I look at it like this. They were 4-2 in the division last year, right? Because they lost in week 18 against Washington and they lost in Philadelphia. I don't see how they go 3-3 in this division, to be honest. Like it feels like at the very worst, they're going to split with all three other teams and they're probably going to sweep one of the three, correct?
I mean, history will tell you that. Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
So
yeah.
Assume they go 4-2 in the NFC East. Like I think that's a pretty safe bet. And assume they go 2-2 in the AFC East, which we think is going to be really hard. Again, that's already 6 wins. I think they're going to be 3-1 in the NFC West between the Cardinals, the Rams, and then can you split with the 49ers and Seattle? I think so. You're already looking at 9 wins there, and you've got all these extra games that you're still playing. Like I have a hard time believing that the Cowboys are going to be like an 8-win team this year. Again, assuming there's not massive injuries on both sides of the ball.
Well, no one can predict for injuries, obviously. So, but yeah, I think that it certainly is. All of that is certainly reasonable. So, I think that I agree that the schedule is harder. I agree that less people believe in the Cowboys, which I mean, again, I understand. But I also think that this, like you said, this is a better team than it was last year. And I don't even think it's close, honestly, just simply from where they are entering into the season versus where they were entering the season last year. I have higher hopes this year with this team than I did the previous 2.
By the way, I'm going 10-7 as a record. I think that's going to be good enough to get you into the playoffs, probably be the 5 seed again, which likely means that you're going to play maybe the Saints, maybe the Panthers, maybe the Falcons in round 1 of the playoffs. Like there's worse spots to be in the NFC than being the 5th seed and taking on the worst division winner, which is kind of where the Cowboys have been the last couple of years. So we'll see. 10-7, 11-6. We both think the Cowboys make the playoffs. On FanDuel right now, the Cowboys are -225 to make the playoffs. So FanDuel also agrees the Cowboys are going to be a playoff team. Not a surprise at all. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every day. And every dayers on tomorrow's show, we're going to answer your Twitter questions. It's the last time to get your Twitter questions in before the season starts. So make sure you do that. Go follow the show on YouTube. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Landon on Twitter @McCoolBCB. I'm @Marcus_Mosher, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.